Hey there, guys. Doing another dog walk and talk today. And what I want to talk about today is a topic really near and dear to my heart, personally and as a trainer. And that's dog reactivity. Dog reactivity is the reason why I got into training. I had to deal with it a little bit with my first dog, Kiara, you see here. A lot of excitement reactivity. And then I had to deal with it really to the next degree with my second dog, Havoc, who had a lot of dog aggression, and his reactivity was explosive and something that I've never dealt with before. And for a long time, I thought was never going to be fixable and I was going to live with forever. So I struggled with it for a long time. I spent probably the better part of a year trying to figure out solutions to it. Tried just about every approach you can think of. And it's the reason I started training, because I couldn't really find answers for it. I think it was overcomplicated. A lot of different outlets and people that and trainers in the industry, I think they just overcomplicate it and they don't really provide answers for it. And it's why I started doing what I do. I figured out with my dog, and just naturally people with dogs like mine with the same issues started asking me for help. And that's kind of how I got going in training. So a lot of my first few dogs that I trained were like big, nasty, reactive dogs, like Rottweilers, German Shepherds, that a lot of trainers, I think, either couldn't help or didn't want to help, or that person just hadn't found someone who knew what they were doing yet before they found me. So I want to talk a little bit about why most dogs that are reactive never actually get the help they need, or never actually fully get rid of it and are just managing it their whole life. To talk about that, I'm going to need to talk a little bit about, why dogs are reactive, and the different methods there are to try and help, and also a bit about management, because, every reactive dog, in my opinion, is being managed, but my definition of management is very different than I think a lot of other trainers' definition of management. Management for me is just staying on top of things and upholding the training and keeping your dog accountable. It's not changing your life super drastically so that you can still have your dog, like always having them on leash, never letting them, leave the house, always having to crate them. Just basically that dog is on a 6-foot leash or inside the house for its whole life, because in my opinion, like if you're going to do that to a dog, you might as well put the dog down. Like that's just no way to live for a dog. We want to be able to do stuff like this. So I want to talk a little bit first about why dogs are reactive. So a lot of people will spend way too much time, in my opinion, trying to figure out why a dog is reactive. I hear it all. When a client comes in, they say, oh, there was this one thing and it set it off and now it's reactive, or he's really good sometimes, but when it's a man in a beard and a toque, then he's reactive, but only if it's a man in a beard and a toque. And if I could just figure out why it's the man with the beard and the toque that sets him off, then maybe I could have the conversation with my dog about that and figure. And then to me, we spend way too much time on that. And the short answer is usually it's a genetic component to why your dog is reactive. Dogs have a fight or flight response to stimuli, and they have a God-given set of nerves. And those two things, if there's the wrong combination, that dog will eventually, start presenting some reactive tendencies, or it just takes a certain thing in the environment to bring that out of them. So if you do have a reactive dog, it's probably not your fault that the dog has ended up showing these tendencies. Now, if the dog is still reactive and you're letting it do it forever, then take some ownership for that and figure out how to fix it. But you need to find the right help first, which nowadays isn't easy. I feel you there. So I think the short answer is usually there's a genetic component to why your dog's reactive. And you could have a dog that was, had that capability of becoming reactive, and then all of a sudden it just sees a certain picture when it's 6 months old of a dog pulling at it and being rude, and it learns that, when it puts on a show and starts barking and growling and pulling at the end of the leash, that thing goes away. And then that dog, if it's not corrected, if it doesn't, if it figures out that gets it its desired outcome, then it's going to keep rehearsing that behavior. And then boom, you've got a reactive dog from there on out. It's going to be reactive on the leash every time it sees a dog and wants to put on a show to make it go away because it works. So 99% of the time, I really do think there's a big genetic component to reactivity. And it's not something you can really train out of the dog. A reactive dog is a reactive dog. However, you can teach a dog to manage its emotions, to manage its arousal, and control it, and teach it how to behave neutrally in those situations. Teach it a better way to deal with those big feelings. And I think that's where a lot of people will go too far down the road of, oh, I just want to, teach it to manage its emotions by throwing cookies in its face and having to veer off the sidewalk every time I see someone. That's not what I'm talking about. I have 2 reactive dogs. Kiara is not nearly as bad as Havoc was, and these dogs are off leash and they can do functional obedience with me around anything. And I do that with, all the dogs that I get in. And I think the reason I've been able to do that with the dogs that I get in is that, I got 2 really hard cases for my own personal dogs, and for me it just wasn't acceptable to have that reactivity, and I was going to do whatever I needed to do to figure out how to fix it. And that's really why most dogs, in my opinion, never get their reactivity fixed. It is a mindset issue. I tried all of the other methods of dealing with reactivity that are more enticing, I think, for the average person. They're more, they kind of pull on your emotions a bit. We love our dogs. We don't want to punish our dogs. We don't want to see them struggling. So, yeah, it's a really enticing way to go about trying to fix reactivity with positive only, and just managing them and like avoiding certain situations with them. I tried it all. I tried, engagement, disengagement games. I tried, scatter feeding treats, throwing food in their face when a dog comes by. I tried desensitizing them to triggers. Nothing really worked. And for some dogs, there might be some dogs that it might work if they're really not that intense and they're not that committed to their intentions of being reactive. But from what I've seen, it really doesn't work with many dogs at all. I've never really actually seen it work to where you get to the point where a dog can just be, and like Kiara right there, we walk by a dog that's clearly leash reactive and growling, and she's just like off leash healing with me, and I don't have to worry about it. I can even talk to the guy and just let him know that just make him feel a little more comfortable. And that's the level of control I'm talking about when we have our reactive dogs. And I can do the same thing with Havoc too. Unfortunately, he's on bed rest for quite a while with 2 surgeries coming up. But that's what I'm talking about. And this is a level we don't usually get to with our dogs because most people don't want to do what needs to be done to fix this stuff. And the fact is, like, when a dog is reactive, that dog, if it's coming from a place of fear, then that dog is scared for its life, quite literally. If it's coming from a place of excitement, it's just straight up over arousal. And then in the rare case where you get dominance or dog aggression, that's just a dog that really gets its kicks by just trying to be the biggest, baddest dog on the block and going bullying another dog. All these things get treated the same way, and that's that they need to figure out quickly that behavior is absolutely unacceptable. And until you kill that arousal, you can't really have a chance of getting through to them. It's sort of like trying to talk someone out of a bar fight when they're like blackout drunk and already decided that they want to fight. There's kind of no way to de-escalate the situation at that point by force. If you've ever been in that situation at like a bar or a club or something, they don't talk to the guy. The 4 bouncers swarm in and carry him out of there, and then one of his friends will talk to him in the morning about how we can do things better. But it's pretty unrealistic to think we can do that with a dog if we can't do that to a person. And that's the thing that most people don't want to do, is really show their dog what is acceptable and what's not, and kill that arousal. It's not pleasant. You have to really correct that behavior, and it can't be these ticky-tacky little things. It can't just be a little pop on the collar and oh, please, no, please stop doing that. It needs to be personal. Your dog needs to understand that, whoa, what I'm doing right now, mom or dad, they really don't like that. And they're going to make sure they hold me accountable for my crap and show me that that's going to be the worst possible decision I could make. And I talk about this as someone from experience, like coming from my own experience, like with my Rottweiler. There was no little prong collar pop or distracting him with treats. Like, he's a very food motivated dog, extremely. And I'm talking like real drive for his food. Like, he will work and fight for his food. Like, he doesn't mess around with his food drive. And you could not get him to take, raw meat when there was a dog around that he wanted to, go dominate. So in those situations, like, the little ticky-tack stuff just didn't work. For him, even like popping him on a prong collar, it doesn't really do anything. We had to, figure out, more how to get through to him in other ways. And that's a pretty intense case. Most dogs, you can solve this with like a prong collar or something like that. But the point is, the correction needs to be high enough for the dog that you have in front of you. And we don't decide, what that is. Some dogs, you can just say no, give them a pop on a leash, and that's it. Some dogs have way more intent in what they're about. And that's when we need to match that if we're going to own those kind of dogs. Like, if you're going to own a dog that has that level of intent and can be that dangerous, even just from an optics point, make people feel uncomfortable. Like, you need to be ready to hold them accountable and deal with that. And what happens is, once you find the way to get through to them, they have a moment where they just like take a breath, and they realize that if it's coming from a place of fear, they realize like, oh, I'm not freaking out anymore. I got, corrected pretty hard and I'm a little shaken up, but now everything's actually fine. I'm just sitting here on the leash and nothing bad is happening. Okay, this is new. Clearly freaking out is not my best interest. I got whammed pretty hard for that. But now I can just kind of exist and try to feel out, other options. And that's where the dog is going to really start to trust you. It's really counterintuitive. People say, oh, you correct your dog, it's going to hate you, it's going to make them more scared. No, it has the exact opposite effect with reactivity. The dog has a come to Jesus moment and can actually take a breath and take in the environment without blowing its lid. And this is when you can start to actually play the engagement games with it and show it the correct behavior and start rewarding the stuff you want to see. You do a pass with a dog you successfully pass a dog and it doesn't freak out, and now you can give it some treats, or you can pull out its ball and play with it, or really just praise it verbally. And this is when the dog is going to realize, like, oh, there is an alternative option here, and when I do behave in this manner, it actually works out quite well for me. So essentially, when you have a dog that's fear reactive, or insecure, which is what most of the dogs that are reactive are, you kind of have to, sign that contract with them where, I get that you don't like these dogs. I'm not going to let people or dogs come up to you. I'm not going to let them pet you. I'm not going to let them charge you, get in your face. I am going to, steer the ship. But on the other side of that, you need to behave so that I can control the situation. Because, part of controlling the situation is having control over you. And if you don't, that's really not going to work out well for you. I'm not the person that you want to make mistakes around. Like, if you act a certain way towards this dog, I am actually going to become a much bigger problem than that dog for you. And that has never failed me with working with these fear reactive dogs. Now, if you have a dog that is just reactive out of arousal and excitement, it's actually a lot easier. You can get away with a smaller correction and just, getting that dog to just realize that, it's actually just being a brat. And you can't just, pull and bark at every dog you see because you want to go see it. And then you just correct the behavior and then, reward the good stuff you want to see, which is engagement with you. It's the same. It really is. It's just the level of intensity the dog brings. You're going to have to match that. So, like, with the dog with the excitement and the arousal, that's pretty easy. You can solve that with a couple pops on the prong collar and re-engaging the dog with you and then rewarding what you want to see. And then you're off to the races. With the fear reactive dogs, sometimes you need to go up a notch. And then occasionally you get the dogs that are, really dominant and have intent to be aggressive and go actually harm another dog. And then that's where you really have to scale up your efforts and know what you're doing. Because those dogs, if you play around with that ticky-tack crap, or even if you just try to shove some food in their face to, divert them from what they're trying to do, they might just come back at the leash and bite your ass. And I say that from being someone who has had that happen and seen it happen as well. And in those cases, you really got to know what you're doing and how to make that message get sent loud and clear. But most people don't want to do this. They want to look for the easy route, the positive reinforcement, not actually confronting the situation head on and just being like, hey, this crap you're doing is unacceptable. Because it is. Your dog could hurt itself. Your dog could hurt another dog or another person. Like, someone could die. A dog could go to the vet and be put down. Your dog could be put on the aggressive dog list and have to wear a muzzle and stay on a leash for its entire life. That's how it works in my city anyways, and I think the majority of cities in Canada. So like, this stuff has to be treated more seriously, in my opinion. But most people don't want to deal with it, and they don't want to do what's necessary, because it's a very primal thing, and I think it needs to be treated that way. And it's not, and once you get that out of the way, you're not doing it forever. Like, I don't correct my dogs for reactivity anymore. Every now and then, if I'm healing with them and there's a bunch of really high aroused dogs, if they pop out of position a little bit because they're excited too, yeah, I'm going to correct that. But I'm not correcting for these big outbursts. Once you do it a couple times and they figure it out, it's done forever. But it makes people uncomfortable. There's very few people that are willing to seek out someone who will do this stuff. But then you get dogs that can actually live and be free. So that's my little rant on reactivity, just my take on it and how I deal with it.